The blaring siren echoed through the combat arena, slicing through the tension in the air. Elsa stood motionless, heart pounding in her chest, her breath coming in quick, shallow gasps. Her visor displayed a single, glaring word. Failed. Red lights flashed, casting a sickly glow over the polished metal floor beneath her feet. Sweat ran down her face, stinging her eyes, but she didn't blink. She couldn't. Not now. Not when something was terribly wrong. Around her, 5 Rexian combat instructors loomed, their massive forms frozen in place. Their exoskeletons, gleaming, sharp, imposing, should have been shifting, recalibrating, moving with the precision that had made them legends across the galaxy. But they didn't. They were statues, unmoving. Elsa's stomach twisted as she pulled off her helmet, her short, dark hair plastered to her forehead. She fought to steady her breath, ignoring the fatigue that threatened to overwhelm her. The automated voice rang out once again, indifferent and cold. "Cadet Morrison, your performance has been deemed insufficient." Trial terminated. Her heart dropped. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not after all the training, not after all the blood and sweat she'd poured into these trials. This was supposed to be the moment she proved herself. But now, the failure wasn't just hers. It was something more. Her gaze flicked to the towering figures of the Rexian instructors. The combat trial wasn't supposed to end like this. They should have been debriefing, walking away. But they remained frozen, motionless. Elsa's eyes narrowed as the confusion deepened. She wasn't alone in the observation room. Leo's eyes were locked on her from above, his posture tense, hands gripping the railing as though he were holding onto the very air itself. His face was set in concentration. A man used to solving problems, but there was something he hadn't figured out. Something about this didn't add up. "Leo," Elsa muttered into her comm unit, her voice low and steady, despite the panic rising in her chest. "Something's wrong. The instructors, they're not moving." She could feel it now, every instinct screaming at her that this wasn't a simple malfunction. She'd fought hard, pushed every limit, but the battle should have been over by now. Why were they still standing there? She turned to face the nearest instructor, a behemoth of a Rexian warrior. Vexthor, the undefeated, the unyielding, the one who had crushed every opponent before her. His plated armor gleamed under the bright lights, but there was no sign of life, not even a twitch. Elsa took a step closer, her heart thudding in her chest. She reached out, pushing against his massive chest plate. Still nothing. Cold, rigid, empty. "Leo, what's happening?" she asked again, her voice thick with growing unease. Leo's voice crackled through Elsa's comm unit, filled with urgency. "Stay where you are, Elsa. Don't move. I need you to check something." Elsa hesitated, glancing back at the frozen instructors. Her instincts told her to leave, to retreat. But Leo's words anchored her. He wasn't one for hesitation. If he said something was wrong, it meant something was very wrong. She turned back to Vexthor, his massive form towering over her. His forearms, each equipped with weapons powerful enough to obliterate a small fleet, were stiff at his sides. Elsa's gaze swept over him again, searching for any hint of a malfunction, anything that might explain why he hadn't moved. "Leo, I'm telling you," she said, her voice steady but tinged with confusion. "He's completely locked in place. I've never seen anything like this." "You're sure he's not faking it?" Leo asked, his tone sharp with disbelief. "Not some sort of last-minute tactic?" Elsa's lips tightened into a thin line. He's not faking anything. You know the Rexians. They're not exactly known for their subtlety. She stepped closer to the instructor, her boots clanging against the metallic floor as she approached him, her fingers reaching out to touch his chest plate again. She pushed harder this time, but it was like pushing against a mountain. Not a single movement. Her mind raced as the possibilities multiplied. Leo, check the readings again. Something's wrong, she urged. Leo's voice came back, tinged with something like panic. I'm seeing it now. Their neural interfaces. Elsa, they're offline. No activity at all. This isn't a malfunction. It's like someone shut them off. Elsa's eyes widened. That didn't make sense. The Rexian combat suits were designed with 17 redundant systems. They had been tested in countless battle scenarios across the galaxy. It was nearly impossible for them to fail like this. Yet, here they were, motionless, lifeless. Elsa's pulse quickened. She backed away from Vexthor, scanning the rest of the instructors. The other four stood as rigid as statues. No signs of life, no hint of activity. It was as if the entire system had been shut down, like someone had flipped a switch and powered them off. Leo, Elsa began, her voice barely above a whisper. Do you think someone did this? Leo was silent for a beat, and Elsa could hear the sound of frantic typing in the background as he worked through the diary. I don't know yet, but I'm not ruling it out. Stay on your toes. Elsa's eyes narrowed. Whatever was happening, it wasn't just a technical failure. She had to be missing something critical. As the silence stretched on, the tension in the arena seemed to swell, thick and heavy. Elsa took another step back, her mind racing to make sense of the impossible scenario unfolding before her. She wasn't sure what was happening, but she knew one thing for certain. This wasn't over yet, and whatever came next, she would need to be ready. Don't leave the arena, Elsa. Leo's voice broke through again, more urgent now. Something's happening. I'll be there soon. Elsa glanced over her shoulder, feeling the weight of his words. As she scanned the arena, the lights flickered for a moment, casting shadows over the still figures. Her heart hammered in her chest. What was Leo about to uncover? She was about to find out. Elsa couldn't shake the feeling that the arena was closing in on her. The silence was oppressive, and the air felt thick with something that didn't belong. The massive forms of the Rexian instructors loomed like statues, their weapons still in hand, their glowing eyes lifeless. It felt as if the entire world had stopped moving, but Elsa's heart continued to race, fueled by a growing sense of unease. Leo, I'm not going anywhere until you figure this out, Elsa said, her voice unwavering, but she couldn't ignore the tension creeping into her chest. You're right. Something's off. She turned to face the arena's other edge, her eyes darting across the observation deck. Leo's presence was still palpable, even though she couldn't see him. She imagined him there, frantic, working furiously to crack the puzzle. His mind always worked faster than hers, his analytical skills cutting through problems like a laser. The only sound in the arena was the subtle hum of the energy shields surrounding them, and the faint echo of Elsa's boots as she paced. A strange sense of isolation settled over her. Her mission, her trial, it felt irrelevant now. This wasn't just about proving herself anymore. Something deeper was at play. Leo, I'm accessing the full trial footage, she muttered to herself as she activated her wrist console. The sleek holographic interface flickered to life in front of her. the familiar blue grid glowing against the cold steel of the arena. She navigated to the footage, replaying the last few minutes of the trial. The usual chaos of combat had been replaced by an eerie calm. The moment she dodged Vexthor's plasma charge, she noticed a shift. His movements were off, too fast, too precise. It wasn't just a simple overcompensation. No, this was something far more calculated. The timestamp flickered on the screen. 3:47. Elsa paused it there, her breath catching as she rewound the footage. Her eyes narrowed at the screen. She had avoided Vexthor's charge, no problem. But what had happened after that moment? "Leo, look at this," she said urgently, rewinding again. The footage showed Vexthor accelerating his movements, unnaturally fast. Elsa's pulse quickened as she ran the calculations in her head. To move at 2.3 times his normal speed, the Rexian instructor's neural interface would have to be overclocked, something that shouldn't have been possible in the middle of a live combat trial. "I forced him to do this," Elsa whispered, the realization hitting her like a freight train. She backed the footage up one more time, her fingers flying across the interface. "Look, he had to overclock to keep up with me. Every time I adapted, he had to push harder, until he couldn't anymore." Leo's voice was sharp as he ran the numbers on his end. "Elsa, you're telling me you didn't just fail the trial, you broke their systems?" Elsa's chest tightened, but she nodded grimly. "I didn't fail, Leo. I crashed the whole system." As the words sank in, Elsa's thoughts raced. The Rexian instructors, feared across the galaxy, had just been systematically disabled by a human who wasn't supposed to stand a chance. What had she done? And more importantly, what would they do now? Elsa's mind raced as the implications of what she had just uncovered sank in. Her heart pounded, not from exhaustion, but from the eerie realization that she had unknowingly pushed the Rexian combat instructors into a system failure. It wasn't just that she'd been fighting for her life. It was that she had pushed them beyond their limits, forcing their neural interfaces to overclock to survive. Each move, each strike, had driven them further into overdrive until their entire system shut down. Leo's voice crackled through the comms, and Elsa could hear the urgency in his tone. "Elsa, do you realize what this means? You didn't just fail. You caused an entire cascade failure in their systems. The combat instructors, they weren't just defeated, they were broken." Elsa swallowed hard, her mind spinning. She hadn't intended this. She had simply fought instinctively against the odds. But now, it seemed she had unwittingly proven a theory that no one had ever dared to consider: that humanity could break a system designed to be invincible. "I didn't just dodge, I adapted. Every engagement, every move. They couldn't keep up." Elsa muttered under her breath. Her fingers grazed the datapad, reviewing the footage once again. She wasn't just fighting for survival. She had fought to break their perfection, their efficiency, and she had succeeded. As the technicians worked frantically to restore power to the Rexian suits, Elsa's thoughts began to focus on what this could mean for humanity. The Rexians, a species renowned for their technological superiority, had created a system of combat that had withstood hundreds of challenges. But they had never accounted for the unpredictable nature of humans. The Rexian combat system relied on precision, speed, and calculated response. Their combat AIs were trained to read and react to a set of predefined variables. They could anticipate attacks, adapt to threats, and counter with precision. But humanity's strength lay in something they couldn't predict: adaptability. When a human faced a challenge, they didn't simply rely on training or instinct. They improvised, they adapted, they broke the system. Elsa's eyes flicked to Vexthor, his massive exoskeleton now lying motionless on the ground. She had pushed him to the limit and beyond. He had fought in countless campaigns, survived battles that would have obliterated lesser species, but now he lay vulnerable. The perfect combat machine had been defeated not by superior strength, but by the very essence of what it meant to be human. "Get them back online, now," Elsa commanded, her voice cutting through the confusion. Her mind sharpened, the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. She wasn't done yet. The fight wasn't over. There was more to uncover here. Let's see what happens when they're forced to face a human who fights to break the system. As the Rexian combat suits slowly flickered back to life, Elsa took a step back, her heart still racing, but her mind clear. The arena felt like a battlefield again. But this time, it wasn't just about survival. It was about proving that humans could do what no other species could: defeat perfection by defying it. The hum of machinery filled the arena as the Rexian combat instructors slowly powered back to life. Elsa stood her ground, watching intently as the massive exoskeletons of the Rexians began to stir. Their glowing eyes flickered to life, and the stiff, rigid postures they had held for so long began to relax. The stillness shattered like glass, leaving Elsa with an odd mixture of relief and anticipation. Vexthor was the first to move. His towering figure rose, his massive arms shifting with a fluidity that belied his earlier paralysis. The other instructors followed suit, their systems coming back online, their movements jerky at first, as though they were shaking off the after effects of a long slumber. Elsa's gaze fixed on Vexthor as he stood, towering above her, but there was something different in the way he looked at her now. The Rexian warlord's helmet shifted slightly, and his translator crackled to life. "In my 400 years of combat, I have never been bested so completely." His voice was low, rough, and for the first time, there was a hint of something. Respect, perhaps. It was the last thing Elsa had expected. "You fought not to win within the rules, but to transcend them entirely," Vexthor continued, his voice thick with awe. "The Rexian combat systems were not designed to handle your kind." Elsa stood still, trying to process the weight of his words. The Rexians had created these combat trials, designed them to break any species that dared to challenge them, to prove their supremacy in combat. But Elsa hadn't just survived. She had broken their system, not by brute force, but by exploiting the one thing they hadn't accounted for: humanity's refusal to play by the rules. The arena had grown silent once again, save for the low hum of the machinery as the technicians worked to reboot the Rexian systems. Elsa glanced over at Leo, who had just entered the arena, his face a mix of disbelief and admiration. He met her gaze, and she could see the realization in his eyes, the same one she had just come to terms with. "We didn't fail," Elsa muttered under her breath, still in disbelief. "We broke them." Leo's eyes widened, and a slow grin spread across his face. "That's one way to do it," he said with a chuckle, but his voice carried a certain pride. Before Elsa could respond, a voice boomed from above. "Cadet Morrison, your performance has been deemed inconclusive, pending recalibration." The commandant's tone was formal, but there was a noticeable shift in his demeanor, one of unease, of uncertainty. The Rexian combat instructors had been frozen in place, defeated by the very human they had designed the trial to crush. But the commandant wasn't done. He looked down at Elsa with a glimmer of something unfamiliar, respect perhaps, but mixed with a hint of fear. However, he continued, your innovative tactical approach has earned you immediate advancement to Level 7 combat classification, a rank previously reserved only for instructors. Elsa's heart skipped a beat. The recognition was overwhelming, but what stunned her most was the underlying truth. Humanity had just rewritten the rules of warfare in a way no one had ever anticipated. The Rexians, once confident in their technological supremacy, now found themselves confronted by something they could neither understand nor control, an unpredictable, relentless force that would not be bound by their carefully laid plans. And as Elsa stood in the arena, staring at the 5 battle-hardened instructors who now regarded her with a mixture of wariness and respect, she couldn't help but feel a surge of pride, not for the victory, but for the truth that had emerged from it. Humanity didn't fight by the rules, and that, she knew, would change everything. The air in the arena was thick with tension as Elsa stood, staring at the 5 Rexian combat instructors who had just been forced to acknowledge the impossible. Vexthor, the undefeated warlord, had bowed his head in her direction, a sign of respect rarely seen from any Rexian, let alone one who had seen countless battles across the galaxy. The moment felt surreal, as if the world had shifted beneath her feet. Leo approached her slowly, his eyes still wide with astonishment. Elsa, what did you just do? His voice was quieter now, almost reverent, as if he were speaking to someone far beyond just a cadet. Elsa shook her head, still processing the gravity of what had just transpired. I didn't do anything extraordinary, she said, her voice steady, but the excitement in her chest hadn't yet faded. I just fought like a human. We're not bound by the same rules. We fight to survive. Leo nodded slowly, but Elsa could see the awe in his eyes. You didn't just break their systems, Elsa. You broke their belief in their own superiority. For centuries, the Rexians have been the epitome of combat precision. But you forced them to question everything they've ever known. Elsa's eyes drifted back to the Rexian instructors, who had finally regained their full mobility, their massive forms now exuding a quiet sense of weariness. They had never been bested like this before. They had been made to look vulnerable, and that vulnerability stirred something in the Rexian command staff. Elsa could feel it in the way the senior officials watched her from the observation deck. Fear, not of her strength, but of the very essence of humanity's unpredictability. Commandant Zix, Elsa said, turning her head toward the Rexian leader who had been watching the entire scene from the shadows. Are we done here? Zix's scaled face twisted into a scowl as he stepped forward. But there was something different about the way he regarded Elsa now. The cold, calculating look had been replaced with something else. Uncertainty. You have no idea what you've done, Cadet Morrison, Zix said, his voice low, but tinged with something else. Concern. We feared humanity for a long time, but I had always assumed that your aggressiveness would be your downfall. Instead, you've proved us wrong. Elsa didn't flinch at his words. She had been trained to handle alien disdain, to rise above it, and now she saw it for what it was, an acknowledgement of humanity's potential. She didn't need the Rexians' approval. She was ready for what was next. What's wrong, Zix? She asked with a smirk. afraid of what happens next. Zix narrowed his eyes. You're not the only one with secrets, Cadet. There are far greater threats out there than your so-called survival tactics. The galaxy will soon see what happens when humanity steps out of line. The Rexians may have been cautious in the past, but no one is prepared for what's coming. Elsa felt the weight of his words, but she didn't let it show. For the first time in her life, she understood what fear felt like, not for herself, but for those who underestimated humanity's will to survive. She had broken their system, but now, it seemed, she had unwittingly opened the door to something far bigger, something the Rexians weren't willing to face alone. I'm not afraid of whatever's coming, Zix, Elsa said, her voice steady. I've seen what humans can do. And trust me, you won't be able to stop us. As Zix turned and left, the rest of the Rexian command staff remained silent, their eyes filled with suspicion and something else. Respect, but also fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of what humanity could become. And Elsa knew one thing for certain. They had just made a dangerous enemy and an even more dangerous ally. The fight was far from over. And now, the true war for humanity's place in the galaxy was about to begin. The tension in the arena hadn't subsided. If anything, it had only grown thicker. Elsa could feel it in the eyes of every official and commander now present, the weight of the entire academy, watching her, analyzing her every move. Her performance, or rather, her unexpected defeat of the Rexian combat instructors, had set off a chain reaction. One that was reverberating through the ranks of the academy and beyond. As Elsa stepped off the training floor, her boots echoing across the metal surface, she couldn't help but feel the shift in the atmosphere. The usual hum of the academy, the sounds of cadets training, instructors giving commands, had been replaced by an almost oppressive silence. No one spoke, yet everyone seemed to be watching her. It was as if her actions had caused a seismic shift in their perceptions of humanity. Leo, walking beside her, was unusually quiet. He had always been the analytical one, the one to point out flaws in the system. But now, there was something in his eyes that Elsa couldn't place. Something between awe and wariness. You did it, Leo finally said, breaking the silence. You didn't just survive the trial, you redefined it. Elsa didn't respond right away. She was too busy processing everything that had happened. But as they neared the command center, she began to realize the full extent of the ramifications. The Rexians might have been beaten, but the galaxy wasn't ready for the implications of what she'd done. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. They were becoming a force that others couldn't ignore. As they entered the command center, Elsa was met by a group of high-ranking officials, most of whom she had never seen before. Their faces were stern, but their eyes betrayed a mix of curiosity, fear, and something else. Respect. Elsa had crossed a line today. She had forced a reckoning. Cadet Morrison, a voice called out. Elsa turned to see the commandant, his expression unreadable, flanked by several Rexian officers. They weren't alone. In the back of the room stood a tall, imposing figure with silver-blue skin, an alien race Elsa didn't recognize. His presence alone sent a ripple of unease through the room. We've called an emergency council, the commandant continued. There are political considerations that need to be addressed. Elsa stood taller, a feeling of unease creeping over her. What's going on? The silver-blue alien stepped forward, his eyes studying her with a mixture of fascination and concern. You've done more than break our system, cadet. You've just become a significant player in the galaxy's power dynamics. And that comes with consequences. Elsa didn't flinch. She had expected this. The galaxy wasn't going to roll over just because humanity had proved itself capable. They wouldn't allow this kind of challenge to go unpunished, or worse, unaddressed. Understand this. The silver-blue alien continued, his voice calm but heavy with authority. What you've done today has implications far beyond this academy. You've forced the Rexians to reconsider their stance on humanity, and that could shift the entire balance of power. Alliances will shift. Enemies will rise. Elsa exchanged a glance with Leo. The weight of the words sank in. She wasn't just fighting for respect anymore. She was fighting for humanity's very place in the universe. The Commandant spoke again, his voice colder. The Rexians are not pleased with how things have gone. They will not let this go unanswered. You've started something much larger than you can possibly understand. Elsa's heart quickened. She had always known there were forces beyond her comprehension. But now, she felt as though she was standing at the precipice of something immense. The war for humanity's survival had just begun, and it wasn't just the Rexians she had to worry about. We've been forced to advance you to Level 7 combat classification, the Commandant announced, his tone sharp. But this advancement comes with new responsibilities. You're no longer just a cadet. You're now a symbol for humanity. And the galaxy is watching. Elsa stood silent, absorbing the weight of his words. She had broken the system, but in doing so, she had just opened a door to a much larger conflict. The galaxy wasn't ready for humanity's brand of unpredictability, and neither was she. But there was no turning back now. The days following Elsa's unprecedented success in the combat trial were a blur. Her once quiet life as a cadet had been replaced with endless debriefs, strategic meetings, and a constant flow of officers from various factions, all eager to understand what had happened and what it meant for humanity. The Academy had never seen anything like this. No one had expected the human cadet to crash the Rexian combat system, not just survive, but shatter it. Everywhere she went, there were whispers. The Academy's top officials seemed on edge, and the Rexians, though polite, no longer looked at Elsa with the same level of indifference. There was fear in their eyes now. Fear of what humans might do if they were pushed too far. Elsa couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was brewing, and the more she learned about the interstellar politics at play, the more she realized just how true that was. Her training sessions became more intense. The Academy had seen the potential in her, but it wasn't just about her skill anymore. They weren't just molding her to be the best soldier. No, now they were shaping her into a symbol, something that humanity needed to show its worth in the galaxy. The command center had become her new home, and it was there that the weight of her new position truly began to settle in. The silver-blue alien, the one who had warned her about the political ramifications of her actions, had become a regular presence at the Academy. His name was Kor, and he was a member of a faction known as the Kelkor, an ancient and powerful race with influence across the galaxy. Kor had warned Elsa that she was now a target. The Rexians are not the only ones who fear humanity's unpredictability, he had told her, his voice low. Other factions, other races, are watching. The moment humanity steps beyond its bounds, they will act, and when they do, You will need more than just combat prowess to survive. Elsa's mind had raced with his words. She wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. She was fighting for humanity's future. The stakes had grown higher, and the implications of her actions now extended far beyond the academy walls. But there was a deeper question that gnawed at her. Why had the Rexians feared humanity for so long? What had happened in the ancient wars that made them so desperate to keep humanity from reaching its full potential? Elsa found herself face to face with Zix again, the Rexian commander who had first witnessed her failure. His reptilian gaze was colder now, tinged with something darker. "You've earned their respect," Zix said, his tone clipped. "But respect does not come without cost. If humanity is to truly enter the galactic fold, there will be those who will test you, and those who will try to crush you." "Let them try," Elsa said, her voice steady, despite the heavy weight of his words. "I'm not afraid." Zix didn't respond immediately. His eyes narrowed as he studied her, and for the first time, Elsa saw something akin to approval in his gaze. But there was no warmth behind it. The Rexians weren't her allies. Not yet. And maybe never. "We shall see, Cadet," Zix replied, his tone as cold as ever. "We shall see." As Elsa watched him leave, a deep sense of unease settled over her. She wasn't just facing the Rexians anymore. There were other players in the game now. Ancient races, political factions, and even the very structure of the galaxy itself was shifting in response to her actions. The question that kept echoing in her mind was one she couldn't ignore. What happens when humanity forces the galaxy to change its rules? Her heart was pounding as she prepared for what was to come. The war for humanity's place among the stars was about to reach its breaking point, and Elsa would be the one at the center of it all. Elsa sat alone in the briefing room, the weight of the galaxy pressing down on her. For the past few days, the Academy had been buzzing with activity. High-ranking officials, alien ambassadors, and military strategists, all gathering to discuss the new reality of humanity's place in the universe. The trial she had failed had ignited a firestorm, and now she was at the center of it, not as a cadet, but as a symbol, a weapon, and a leader. The war that was coming wasn't just one of battles and strategy. It was a war of perception, of power, of alliances and betrayals. Humanity had just made its first major move on the galactic chessboard, and the pieces were shifting in ways no one could predict. Elsa had played her part, unknowingly, but now she had to learn how to navigate this dangerous new game. "Cadet Morrison," a voice interrupted her thoughts. Elsa looked up to see Leo standing in the doorway, his expression tense but determined. He had become a fixture in her life since the trial, her confidant, her partner, and now her closest ally in this turbulent new world. "They're ready for you," Leo said, stepping into the room. He gestured toward the holographic display in the center of the room, which flickered to life with a series of tactical maps and military readings. Elsa stood and walked toward the display, her eyes scanning the information. The Academy wasn't just focused on her survival anymore. They were using her success as a launching point for humanity's future strategy. "What's this?" Elsa asked, pointing to the map. Leo activated a set of coordinates, and a projection of an alien world appeared. "This is the Valtor system, a stronghold for the Krillian Confederacy. It's one of the most powerful military powers in the galaxy right now, and they've just been made aware of your success." Elsa frowned. "You're telling me the Krillians are involved now?" Leo nodded, a grim look on his face. They've always been involved. The Krillians see humanity's unpredictable nature as a potential threat. They're a paranoid race. And the Rexians, well, they've been their allies for a long time. But your performance in that trial, Elsa, it's going to change everything. Elsa felt a knot tighten in her stomach. The Krillians had long been an enigmatic presence in galactic politics. Their militaristic society was known for its ruthlessness and calculated aggression. If they saw humanity as a threat, that meant something far more dangerous was on the horizon. Leo's fingers danced across the controls, zooming in on the map. The Krillians are already mobilizing their fleets, and the Rexians are going to back them up. They think humanity could destabilize the galactic order. And the worst part, they're right. Elsa crossed her arms, her mind working furiously. So, they want to stop us before we have a chance to prove ourselves. Leo nodded, his expression darkening. Exactly. They want to make sure we stay in our place. But here's the catch. Humanity doesn't have a place in their system. You've proven that. And now, they're scrambling. Elsa's thoughts raced. The Krillians, the Rexians, and now others were watching them, waiting for a reason to strike. But she knew something they didn't. Humans weren't predictable like the other races, and that made them far more dangerous. Then we give them a reason to fear us, Elsa said, her voice steady but resolute. Leo raised an eyebrow. You're not thinking about launching a counteroffensive, are you? No, Elsa replied, shaking her head. But we need to show them that we won't back down. We'll fight. Fight on our terms. And if they're going to come for us, they'll learn just how unpredictable we can be. The tension in the room was palpable. The Krillians were planning their move, but Elsa knew that humanity's next steps would decide everything. She wasn't just a cadet anymore. She was a part of something much bigger, a spark that could ignite the galaxy into a war that no one was prepared for. As Elsa turned back to the map, her fingers brushed the display, her thoughts focused and clear. She had to lead humanity through this. The war was coming, and it was a war they couldn't afford to lose. The tension was suffocating as Elsa stood before the massive command center, staring at the star charts that glowed in front of her. This wasn't just a military operation anymore. It was a test of humanity's survival. The galaxy had watched her, tested her, and now it was time to show them what humanity was truly capable of. The Krillian Confederacy had already started mobilizing, preparing for a full-scale offensive. The Rexians, despite their initial shock at her actions, had rallied to their side. And Elsa, caught at the center of it all, knew one thing with certainty. The war that had begun with a single combat trial was now spiraling into something much bigger, something that could change the course of galactic history forever. She wasn't alone, though. Leo, always at her side, stood with her as the final plans were laid out. They're coming for us, Elsa, Leo said, his voice low and steady. The Krillians won't stop until they think they've crushed humanity's potential. The Rexians, well, they're scared. They didn't want to admit that you broke their perfect system. And now, we're the target. Elsa's gaze hardened as she looked over the tactical readouts. I know, she said quietly, but we're not going to let them just take us down. We're going to fight. On our terms. We'll force them to fight in our world, the unpredictable, relentless world of humans. For the first time since this all began, Elsa felt something shift inside her. She wasn't just a cadet anymore. She wasn't just fighting for survival. She was leading a revolution, one that could reshape everything. As the minutes ticked away and the preparations continued, Elsa thought about the battles to come, the tactics, the strategies. She knew the galaxy's most powerful races had underestimated humanity before, but this time, the stakes were higher than ever. The very nature of combat was about to change, and humanity would be the ones to show the galaxy why they feared humans in the first place. A voice echoed across the command center, pulling Elsa back to the present. "Fleets ready, Cadet Morrison." "It's time." Elsa turned toward the massive hollow screen that flickered to life, revealing the vast fleet that humanity had gathered in preparation for the inevitable conflict. Her heart raced with anticipation. They were ready, ready to defend everything they'd fought for, and to prove that humanity was a force the galaxy would not dare ignore. But as she watched the fleet form in front of her, a haunting realization gnawed at her. This wasn't just about defeating the Rexians or the Krillians. This was about something far deeper. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for their place in the universe. The battle for the galaxy's future had begun, and there was no turning back now. The final question hung in the air, unanswered and unresolved. What happens when humanity forces the galaxy to reckon with its true potential? Elsa didn't have all the answers yet, but she knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning.